It's more than just steel and gears. It pulls you in and doesn't let go.
Alrighty, hello. Welcome, everybody. We have with us today Konstantin von Hofmeister of
Hello, how are you?
Hello, and of course Dudley Newwright.
Hello.
Who is anonymous, so we can't see him. He's just DN. All right, so we got a ton of things to talk about today. This is the new format of the Carousel, which is a live show with two guests, and we go topic. And I've been told that I need to keep it fucking moving and not think about things and bloviate too much, and just keep the party going. So I'm gonna try and, we're all sort of deep thinkers here, so I'm sure that we're gonna actually want to get into these topics in a serious way, but there's so much to talk about. So let's get right into it, and then you guys can show your stuff at the end of it. Please do share this, because retweet, share the thing that is currently up on Twitter and everywhere else, because we want to get as many people on the stream as we can. That goes for all the viewers as well. So yeah, okay, here we go. Let's get into the topics. First and foremost, Luigi, the CEO shooter. I think his last name is Luigi's Mansion, right? He's Luigi Mansion. And his manifesto came out today. I wrote a fantastic hot take of it. And then it shortly came out that it was not the real manifesto. So what's the status of what's going on? Dudley, you go ahead.
Wait, that essay that you wrote that allopathic medicine thing was bogus?
It's not. Nobody know. As far as I can tell, and maybe somebody can comment in if anybody wants to say anything. I can't tell if that manifesto was real. Nobody seems to know. It looks like there's a community note on it that says it's not real, but it also kind of feels real-ish to me. And so it's unclear whether or not this manifesto was actually real.
Huh. Well, like you said in your response, I think that, more and more of us on the right are either recognizing, newly recognizing, or it's reinforcing our distinction from, call it the old right or the libertarian right, that this shit is not working, healthcare, and it's just broken in so many ways, and the human suffering that it inflicts on the Americans, and this is the case across the Western world, is incalculable. And I don't know if the answer is some sort of universal healthcare or what, but I think we can at least be honest enough with ourselves to say that this current system is so immiserating.
So what do you think about so the system is broken beyond all reckoning, whether or not, okay, so he wrote a manifesto, supposedly, that I wrote a response to. In this manifesto that he wrote, he blames what he calls the allopathic complex. Allopathic basically means Western medicine. So it means like the way in which Western medicine works, which is you show up at the doctor, and the doctor's goal basically is to give you a treatment, whether that treatment is a drug, whether it's a surgery, a procedure of some kind, whether it's some new test. basically the doctor is there to sell you something. And, a lot of these treatments are undeniably effective, right? But he is suggesting that this system has gotten completely out of control and it leads to the mismanagement of people who are in deep suffering. And he uses the example of his mother. Part of the reason why this resonates is kind of real to me is I think he's gay. This guy is gay. And gays have kind of a really intense relationship with their mothers in this way. It's like it felt that part felt real, that he would kill to defend his mother, right? We're also in the era of the vengeful son, we know, so it goes along with that, that sort of egregore, or whatever you call that. And so, but on the other hand, the thing that doesn't make any sense about his manifesto is he's saying that allopathic medicine is the problem, meaning all this kind of drug dealing, procedural, for-profit medicine. But then he's blaming United Health for not paying the claims. But it's like he's mixing two things up, because if you're blaming allopathic medicine, the insurance company is actually trying to not pay for more of these treatments, right? So he also says that the first doctor that his mother saw said it was psychosomatic, her pain, because it was this chronic, endless pain. And then over time, the insurance company stopped paying the claims as it became increasingly clear that there was no allopathic solution for this woman's problems, right? Because we're assuming she's, an aging single woman. But we don't even know if this thing is real. This is the problem. Also,
Yeah, so I actually am looking at, who Ken Klippenstein is?
Vaguely. Isn't he bad? Isn't he a bad guy?
Well, he's a lib journalist.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
But
Sorry.
he allegedly has the real thing, and it's actually quite short. But it basically, I'll just read an excerpt which says, the U.S. has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank 42 in life expectancy. United is the largest company in the U.S. by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, and Walmart. It has grown and grown, but it has our life expectancy? No. The reality is these, and it says indecipherable, have simply gotten too powerful. They continue to abuse our country for immense profit. Just kind of like basic bitch arguments against big healthcare.
So he's saying he has obtained a real version of the manifesto.
Yeah, if you go to,
I'm
I'll
looking
DM
at
it to you, but
I'm
you
looking
can,
at it. So
Okay.
here, we can look at it together here. So he's saying it is this. Okay. So, yeah. Here, let's put ourselves on the screen here.
It's like 100
To
words
the
or maybe
feds, it's
150
very short.
words. The first half of him saying don't try to figure this out. It's pretty simple. He's telling the feds to not waste their time. The parasites had it coming.
CAD. So he's saying a basic CAD must be how he made the 3D gun.
Yeah.
I do apologize for strife of traumas. Okay, so
He's
this is
saying that,
suggesting that the whole thing, that whole forgery is fake, which is.
So what's the motive though? Because the motive is because the insurance didn't pay for his mother's endless ailments, or what's the reason he shot the insurance guy then? Because according to what you wrote, your hot take, it was completely pointless. The insurance guy was basically innocent because the insurance company was basically on his side, right? By saying that we don't want to pay
allopathic
because
thing,
it's psychosomatic, right? But if that's not the case, I mean, if he was really pissed off at the insurance company because it didn't pay, then I guess that's the motive then, right? Or what's
but
the actual motive?
in this thing, here, I'll just read it. Look, I'll just read it. It's short enough to read. Okay, so this is supposedly, according to Ken Klippenstein, his real manifesto. But who knows if this is real? We don't know what's real. And actually, this whole thing feels a little the whole thing feels a little bit patsy-ish to me. But he says to the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for the country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience, the spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for any strife of traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the U.S. had the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly 42 in life expectancy. United is the undecipherable largest company in the U.S. by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, and Walmart. It has grown and grown, but as our life expectancy? No, the reality is these indecipherable have gotten simply too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed, e.g. Rosenthal more. Decades ago, the problems still remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty.
Well, the motive isn't clear to me still.
Yeah, not at all. It's not clear at all.
I mean, your hot take made perfect sense, meaning that he basically is a criminal and killed, well, the wrong guy. Well, you shouldn't kill anybody. But if you're going to target somebody, then there should be at least some kind of motive. But apparently, according to your hot take, he was just very confused because he basically contradicted his own claims because he said the enemy is like Western medicine, basically. And the insurance company, like you said, basically agreed with him. So we don't want to pay because it's psychosomatic. So what's the point of paying like, I don't know, 180,000 for operations or whatever, right?
Yeah, so there's a few things that kind of contravene perhaps my take, which was based on perhaps the fake manifesto. Although, I don't know, man. That manifesto seemed so specific that it would be weird. It would be strange to fake that, but who knows? Another thing, he just got arrested, and in his arrest, he yells something like, "This is ridiculous. This is an insult to the intelligence of the American people," and that would suggest he's saying it's all the American people are not being told the truth, right? Wouldn't that suggest that? The one thing you can hear him say is
either that or he's fully schizoid, and you can't really make heads or tails of anything he might have to say. Like maybe he thinks that that people in a delusional state like that might have a whole framework that's completely in their head of like what's happening in that moment,
right,
and who's responsible. And maybe he thinks that like there's some shadowy billionaire out there who's secretly persecuting him right now, and
right.
and those aren't real police, those are fake police and fake cameras.
Yeah,
but everything is weird because apparently he was recognized by some McDonald's employee and he had like the weapon on him and the manifesto eating at McDonald's. But when you look at the photographs of him, he's like, well, he's very muscular. He's in really good shape. So like, why would he even eat at McDonald's?
I saw something that I don't know if this is a rumor, but that location was, he had certain things that he was doing to like communicate a certain number that was replicated across several of his actions. It was like 286 or 386 or something, which is the medical code for claim denial. And the McDonald's was like 386 miles from the shooting, and then that like he had this like Pokemon in the fake manifesto, and that was like the number 386 Pokemon, and he's had 386 tweets. I don't know if that's real, but that's like, we live in this media world now where, the downside of Elon saying you are the media now is that there's just absolutely no way to know what's actually happening anymore.
Well, it's also very, very early. I mean, I do think the truth, the truth. I mean, who knows what is going on? I mean, he wrote what on the bullets? It was funny because also the things he wrote on the bullets weren't exactly perfect either. It was like the thing that he wrote on the bullets was what? Deny, defend, depose. But actually, the book is called something slightly different. So it's very unclear whether he's trying to suggest that this is all about a claim denied for him personally. This manifesto that we just saw, it seems much more general. Like it seems like not even really that specific to his own life. But other people have been saying that he suffered horrible back problems, right? Is that real?
His Twitter account had an X-ray of what appeared to be a back surgery, like some sort of like bolts or whatever they're called in his lower back.
Yeah, and he said something like I'm a little crazy now because I broke my back doing X or Y. Also, there's all these people out here saying this other thing about it's actually a function of he took psychedelics after he broke his back, and that's why he went crazy.
Yeah, he got one-shotted.
Yeah, what does that mean?
There's this old tweet by Landshark that talks about how guys do ayahuasca or like heavy psychedelics that have no idea what they're getting into, and they get one-shotted as a video game reference to getting killed in one shot. They get one-shotted by a 6D Aztec demon, which is a reference to people who believe that actual demons are being communicated with when you do heavy psychedelics. But I mean, that's a jokey way of saying it. But what he's really saying is that there's speculation that that these LSD and ayahuasca and so on are not as safe as we think, and that some people actually do get irreparably, harmed from doing them and spiral out of control.
I don't buy that. That's something that I don't buy. And the reason I don't buy that, and I know that people say this all the time, and it's something that people like to say, but I know a lot of very, very heavy drug users, and the only ones that I have ever met that have lost their mind, it's never from psychedelics. It's from weed. It's from people who smoke weed all the time, like all day, every day, in huge quantities. And Adderall. The people who are really the worst off is kids, like friends who've been prescribed Adderall since they've been kids. And over time, they're just so dependent on it that it's like drives them crazy. Those are the things I've seen. I've never seen anyone, and I have never met one single person in my entire life that was like, I did acid and then I went insane. Never. I've never seen it.
Yeah. Nor have I.
Yeah.
You're sort of a skeptic about the drugs are being laced too, right? Like that people are ODing from, cocaine that's been laced with fentanyl and at high numbers.
Yes, I do. I think that that's largely fake because the numbers don't add up. If the people who die from magic crazy fentanyl overdoses are like always homeless people. You have a couple examples, very, 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 very rare examples of just like normal everyday people snorting a fentanyl and dying, right? But you have to imagine if that was that lethal, half the bankers on Wall Street would be dead, right? Yet somehow they never get affected by this. And it's like, in the elite circles, nobody ever dies from these things. So it's like, why is it?
It's like razor blades in your kids' Halloween candy.
Yeah, it's like it happened like one time ever. And it's like, then they thought, All right, this is a different topic. Let's wrap this section up, and we're going to keep hammering the new topics. But I just want to leave this by asking both of you, Constantine, you first. What's your moral call here? Was this guy right? Was he wrong? If so, why was he wrong? What's the implications for the healthcare sphere generally? What do you think?
Well, 100% wrong because it's murder and it's a crime. And well, not only is it illegal, it's also immoral. And there's basically no benefit because he killed a big shot in the insurance industry. Okay, so the big shot is dead. Some other guy is going to take his place, and the system's just going to continue as before. It won't change anything. And well, and the killer basically ruined his own life. He was very young. He went to a good school. He had his whole life ahead of him, probably a really good career. He was supposedly very smart with a 130 IQ. So he basically, I don't know, flushed his life down the toilet, killed an innocent man, basically a cog in the machine, like we basically all are, right? Because it's a system that is the problem. It's not the individuals that work within the system, in my opinion. And well, taking a life, well, is always wrong, especially if the person whose life was taken is basically just doing his job and following orders, as they say, right? I mean, he personally didn't really kill anybody himself, I would say. So the fact that he was killed by somebody is basically a stain on the other person's conscience. So yeah, I cannot condone it.
Totally.
Yeah, I feel similarly, and that I think that this sort of political violence only begets more chaos and violence and erodes trust and social cohesion, and it just feels like a bad omen. And I hope we don't see copycats of it. And at the end of the day, like these problems have to be sorted out politically. As long as there's a political structure that dictates that this is how the healthcare market operates, that is how it's going to operate, regardless of who's CEO of which companies. It's. I think what this guy's hoping for is that if this happens enough times, that people are going to be too afraid to run health insurance companies, and that they'll somehow just collapse. No, what's going to happen is every healthcare industry CEO is now going to load up with bodyguards and not go outside anymore. They're still going to want to make a ton of money, and there's the demand for what they do is still there. So yeah, I mean, I like I said earlier, I'm not a healthcare policy wonk or anything like that, but I recognize that there's something untenable about healthcare in the U.S. And that the way to solve it is by, probably, I would love to see the Trump administration use this as a signal that people are ready for healthcare reform from the right.
Yeah. Well, here's my conspiracy theory that I'll leave everyone with. What if the people who tried to kill Trump in the assassination was pharma? Because pharma, as I said in my post, is like the most powerful entity in the entire world, as we learned during COVID when it was able to shut down the entire world. So what if pharma tried to kill Trump and this was payback for that? And what if they tried to kill him because they would do anything to keep RFK out of office, right? Like, because RFK is going to blow the lid. He's pharma enemy number one. So what if actually this was the new elite paying back the Trump assassination attempt using their own
Counter-elite, the Trump team.
Yeah, what if this was the Trump team, the Musk team, using their own patsy, kind of right-coded internet patsy, to go against their patsy, who was like a left-wing, patsy. It's, you know what I'm saying? Do you get the theory here?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think that there's so much money at play that it's almost within the realm of believability that these kinds of things are actually happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I believe it. I
when
totally believe it.
when you
Anyway,
think
all
about God.
Sorry, let's move on. Okay, so I want to share this great Dugan quote. Our boy Dugan. What's up, Alex? Shout out to our boy Dugan, who I love. he has a quote that Constantine shared here. In Romania, we witnessed the first episode of the insurrection by the liberal totalitarian forces of Soros and Schwab's Europe against Trump's America. It is possible that the ultra-liberal dictators of the EU may end up confronting both the US in the West and Russia in the East. So I know I'm not really a great geopolitics guy, but basically, from what I understand, the thing that's happening here is the Romanian elections, which were careening towards electing a nationalist, were canceled by the people in Romania who are the people in charge, who have always been very pro-EU, very pro-globalism, and whom Soros has been screwing around with for like decades. He's been like active in Romania forever. You know, he's from Hungary. So Constantine, you're absolutely the number one guy to tell us the story here.
Yeah, I don't think Soros is behind it. I think it's the American government, to be honest, right? Because Romania, like most Western European states, are not sovereign countries. They're basically American vassal states. And Romania definitely is like a US satrapy, basically. And the election of Georgescu, the guy who was going to be president, because they have a 2-round system like in France, right? So he won the first round, surprisingly, because I think he was a complete like newcomer, and he only became so popular through TikTok videos, apparently, right? He was like insanely popular on TikTok because now it's the younger generation, like statistically, according to the polls, that vote nationalist and conservative more than the boomers. And young people watch TikTok and they go on X and all that stuff. I think you have the same phenomenon in the United States, because I also read the statistically, like more young people voted for Trump than older people. Yes, like young men more than older men. And you have the same in Germany, like with the Alternative for Germany party, the AfD in East Germany. I mean, it's the strongest party, the AfD, in the state of Thuringia now, the second strongest in Saxony and Brandenburg. And the reason it's only the second strongest in Saxony and Brandenburg, it's because of people above 60, right, or even above 50 that voted against the AfD, because all the young people voted for the AfD, the majority of them at least. So I think you have the same phenomenon in Romania, because I think it's international. So you had all the young people influenced by TikTok that basically voted him into victory. So he won the first round. They were gonna have a second round on the 8th of December, and that one was canceled. And according to polls, before the second round, like the predictions were that he had like 63%, and the woman he was running against had like 37%, right? So it was very, very likely that he was going to win the second round and he was going to be Romania's next president. So yeah, they made up the story. They came out like 2 days before the election and said, well, we have to cancel the election because of Russian interference, of course, right? Because like supposedly like Russians paid like, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people to post videos on TikTok, and thereby manipulating the Romanian populace into voting for the wrong candidate. Basically, the argument, I think the main argument that the Romanian judges made, there was no level playing field, right? Because the Russians manipulated it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's totally bizarre, right? Because there's never any level playing field. Like, I mean, you're in the US. There's no level playing field. Like, it's completely biased against. I mean, it was always completely biased against Trump. Like the entire mainstream media, all of Hollywood, the entire establishment was always openly hostile to Trump. Like I watch CNN sometimes. They weren't even trying to pretend to be objective anymore. Like they were openly hostile to Trump. But that's of course not election interference. And when it came out that Zuckerberg manipulated Facebook, and all that stuff, nobody gives a shit basically, right? It's only when supposedly the right does something, then of course it's unfair and everything has to be canceled. Now the point is that they haven't presented evidence yet of this so-called Russian interference. So we don't even know if it's true, right? I mean, it could be true, but it could also not be true. So we don't know. So I think that
That's incredible. So they were able to cancel the elections without providing evidence.
Yeah,
of
I mean, they're still
interference.
asking. They're still asking for evidence, right? They haven't shown a single shred of evidence.
So,
Yeah, they cancel it
what body
basically.
was able to do that? What body had the
It was
power
it
to
was like
cancel the elections?
it was the constitutional court in Romania, right? Because they said it's a threat to democracy, it's a threat to the electoral integrity of the country, you know, all that claptrap,
That
right?
is
So,
insane.
but it's quite amazing because this case was the very first time ever when they've done it really openly and like it's very transparent that basically stole the election, right? It's a right? I think I lost the connection.
No,
Can you hear
we
me?
can still hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Can you not hear us? Oh, he's frozen.
Right. So,
Wait, there you are. Hello?
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Sorry, there was some connection issue. So basically, they stole the election openly, right? Which is unprecedented in all of Western history, I would say. I mean, they've always stolen elections, of course. They've
Yeah,
always
but they
manipulated.
didn't just straight up cancel the thing.
Yeah, but openly, like basically,
Yeah.
like everybody can, the whole world can see it. Like they basically just basically said, we don't like the guy who's going to win, thereby we're just gonna not let him win, and that's it. We're just gonna take it away from him, and that's exactly what they did. Well, everybody's upset.
Do we know how popular he was? Like, was it, did he have 60% of the vote? Did he have 80% of the vote? Was he hugely popular?
He was insanely popular. Like I just read a couple of hours ago, there's this, I don't know if you know this X account called Daily Romanian. He gives the best updates on this case. He just posted something now that they collected they started a petition basically saying that we should have the election anyway in 2 days, and it got over like 1 million signatures from Romanian citizens in a matter of days, like 2 days, right? I mean, obviously he's like Trump. Everybody wants him. I mean, the majority of Romanians want him to be president, but the establishment doesn't, right? But I don't think it's the Romanian establishment. It's the American establishment, of course. I mean, it's the Americans that control all these countries. And I think it's also connected to, of course, to the conflict in Ukraine, right? Because they're afraid that this guy, the Georgescu, that was going to be the new president, because he's not necessarily pro-Russian, right? But he's pro-Romanian. But being pro-Romanian is always interpreted as being pro-Russian. It's the same with like Viktor Orban in Hungary, right? Because Viktor Orban, I wouldn't call him pro-Russian either, right? But the point is he's not anti-Russian. He's not suicidal like the Germans, for example, ruining their own economy for no reason at all, right? So Orban is a very reasonable man. He says, okay, so I'm the leader of my country, which is Hungary, so I'm going to do what is best for my country. And it is not in the interest of my country to declare Russia an enemy. Because why would I refuse cheap Russian oil and gas, right? And instead buy American gas, which is 4 times as expensive. It's insane, right? So he refuses to do that. And he also refuses to send weapons, etc., to Kiev. I mean, which makes sense, because how does Hungary benefit from this? Like, why would any Central European country benefit making Russia its enemy? It's crazy, right? So he's not pro-Russian. He's just very sensible and reasonable. And Georgescu, the Romanian guy, is basically the same as Orban, right? He said, Romania needs to be a sovereign country. We should stop letting ourselves be controlled by the United States and NATO, right?
Yeah, and also probably the EU too, right?
Yeah, and the EU is just another. It's an American controlled thing, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the establishment. I mean, the headquarters is in the United States, of course, but it's international. So I'm not saying it's not like I'm not anti-American or anything. I'm just saying like the elite originated in the United States, but has become international. Yeah. But they all dance to the same tune, basically, right? And sovereign countries are basically a thorn in their eyes. They cannot tolerate it.
So do you see this as, so remember there was the whole notion of Turbo America, which was, what's his name? Yeah, whoever that guy is. He had a thing about Turbo America not long ago, which was basically saying this exact thing, that America has never been more powerful. It's actually a global empire. It has its tentacles in every single thing imaginable. It seems weak, but in fact, it's never been stronger before. So, do you see this as like this elite having just been dethroned by Trump in America? Do you see this Romania thing as them trying to avoid a Trump-like situation in Romania?
Yes, definitely.
Because they want to keep control over there?
Absolutely, 100%. Yes, absolutely. And I also think that, well, what Trump should do when he actually comes into power in January, he should start sanctioning these governments, even the European ones, for doing this.
Yeah, anti-democracy. There's got to be some anti-democracy
because all the liberal countries always sanction countries if they don't elect candidates to their liking. I mean, it's just, the same thing is happening in Georgia now. I'm talking about the country, not the state, right? So you also had an election, but the wrong, according to the liberal establishment, the wrong people won the election. So now they're orchestrating these street riots, basically. And the Georgian government is basically cracking down on these riots, rightfully so, in my opinion. But now, of course, the liberal media is saying, oh, it's tyranny, dictatorship. They're, the poor, peaceful demonstrators, when in reality, they're not peaceful. They're throwing I don't know, Molotov cocktails against the parliament building and lighting fires in the street. And it's a riot. It's not a peaceful demonstration. And they lost the election, so they have no right to riot in the first place. Because, I mean, you remember what happened, like when Biden, quote unquote, won the election. You had the conservatives in Washington demonstrating, and the media portrayed them as evil monsters, basically. So, but the same things, similar things are happening in Georgia now. But it's people that the liberal establishment supports. So they're heroes and not evil monsters. So basically, they're also trying to steal the election in Georgia, right? So they're trying to overthrow, basically, the legitimate government in Georgia to install their puppets.
Wow.
It's very similar to what's happening in Romania. It's happening all over the place, right?
Yeah, and, it's like they're trying to get in their hits before they're sort of pushed out of the way. Right. I mean, they're kind of getting in their final.
It's completely insane, and Dugin is saying it. Other people are saying it. Like Tucker Carlson is saying it. He said, that's why he went to Moscow last week to interview Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, because also can see it's very dangerous because we are risking World War III, basically, especially with the Biden administration's decision to basically allow the Ukrainians to shoot missiles into the heart of Russia itself with the obvious assistance of NATO, right? Because the Ukrainians wouldn't be able to operate these missiles by themselves. So they basically need American personnel to do this. So it's basically Americans shooting missiles into Russia, according to a lot of analysts, which is very dangerous, right? Considering that Russia has 5,000 nuclear warheads. I mean, it has more than the US in terms of quantity, right? Yeah. So, I would consider this risky business. And Biden is doing this as a lame duck president, a month before he's finished. Basically trying to ruin it he's probably trying to ruin it for Trump, basically, because Trump said he wants to make peace with Russia. So they're doing all they can to make it very, very difficult for Trump to do this. Yeah,
they're trying to irritate it beyond repair. Wow. Yeah, that seemed the Romania thing seemed important to me because it was just like a desperate regime, really going to lengths that it could not go to in America, obviously, even though they probably tried. But canceling the Roman election is just like, wow, they're really trying to cling to power. These people, even though clearly the people of the world do not want them in power anymore, but they sure are clinging to it.
I sometimes like to, think about what sort of technological solutions might be deployed to ensure election integrity, right? Like, I'm sure there's people thinking about this, the Elons of the world. Some people propose that the blockchain could be leveraged, but at the end of the day, no matter how transparent and technologically secure your election is, if the standing government just calls it off because they don't like the outcome, there's really not much you can do about it. I mean, I guess they have this pretext about Russian interference, which would be harder to claim if there were more election integrity. But it seems to me that we need to do physical removal, as Hans Hermann Hoppe would say, physical
It's just
removal of communists.
it's just well, I find this very strange anyway, that this so-called Russian interference, because they're claiming that the Russians basically had some bots or maybe even real people that uploaded thousands and thousands of videos onto TikTok and thereby influenced the election. Yeah, but like, are they saying that the people in Romania wouldn't have voted for this guy if the Russian produced videos on TikTok didn't exist? And I don't. It's just very strange, because like, the people make up their mind from what they see, and if the videos don't even lie, if they just basically repeat the campaign platform of this guy, and people watch it and they say, okay, I agree with it, so I'm going to vote for this guy. Isn't that a reasonable thing even? I don't know. It's just very odd.
Yeah, no,
And
I mean, you
besides,
have to, like, it's like, do we believe in democracy or not? Do we believe that the average man on the street has the capability to make up his own mind, regardless of whatever propaganda war is happening on either side? And, if you don't think that, then you don't really believe in democracy. It's like, let's just be honest with each other.
Yeah, and then it's like, what do they believe in? If they don't even believe in the thing that they were supposedly exporting across the world, what is it that they do believe in?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to believe that democracy is a sort of smokescreen. Nobody really wants it, because the moment you start losing, at least,
you don't want democracy anymore, right?
To me, this goes back to at least the hanging chads of the Bush-Gore election of, I can't remember what year that was. Yeah, I mean, it's like, we want what we want, and the idea that there's like a 51% majority is the only thing standing between us and getting what we want. It's just very flimsy.
Be able to trans kids for profit on behalf of Pfizer. I mean, maybe it is all pharma. Maybe we actually live in a pharma globo pharma, empire. Or
I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. No, sorry. I think it's all ideology, to be honest, right? Because I think the people in power, I mean, the majority of them actually believe what they preach. Because I know that a lot of people on the right, and well, also people on the left, they think it's all propaganda and they don't really believe it. All they want is money, power, women, whatever. But I think it's not true. I think they actually do believe what they preach, right? All this, I don't know, diversity is great, and LGBTQX plus whatever, all the letter agenda, right? I mean, I think they totally believe in it, and they think it needs to be implemented, and they view themselves as the good guys, because nobody views himself as a bad guy, right? I don't think Soros thinks he's like a James Bond villain, right? No. I think he thinks that he's James Bond, right? And Trump is a James Bond villain. So, and that's the thing, right? So everybody thinks he has the moral high ground here.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, really, it's about. But again, it still raises the question, okay, what is their ideology though then? So if they think they're the good guys and they're trying to spread this ideology throughout the world, what is it? Because it's not democracy. So if it's not democracy, what is it? So, because that's what the whole excuse forever was, that it was about democracy. It was about promoting democracy throughout the world. But what's actually really funny is who's like the only people we bombed? The only people we bombed was Serbia. And we bombed Serbia for being racist, basically, right? for ethnic cleansing reasons. So like what really is our ideology? And Dudley, you've said this before, like when we're talking about what is this Borg, like what is the value of this liberalism? What do they actually really care about? The one thing they can't go back on is the trans stuff. They're willing to go back on Israel. For no problem. We'll go back on Israel. And that's a democracy, right, in the Middle East. So it's certainly not about democracy. What is it about? It's really about like racism, right?
Yeah.
I
mean, you
like,
might be
that's
able
really
to,
what they care
maybe
about.
there's
That's
an
really
umbrella
what it is.
term where you could like, this sort of like egalitarian urge could be called like an urge to invert, or like to tear down existing hierarchies and replace them with inverted hierarchies, where the weak are in charge, or the people who weren't in charge are now in charge. It's some sort of like primal need to say fuck you, dad. Maybe that's what it's all about for George Soros. I don't know. But I think you're right that there's like something underneath this certainly the stated ideology.
Yeah. Right. I think there was a BAP term called GNC, which we won't explore. But it does seem like race communism in this way. All right, let's keep moving. Which is I've learned we got to move. All right, so let's get just a quick, since we have the geopolitics guy here. I know Dudley, you're probably like, I want to talk about culture. But
mainly because I'm too dumb to know about geopolitics.
Let's just get one more geopolitics thing out of the way here, because I'm actually interested in this. Now, isn't it so nice that we don't have to talk about American politics anymore? I'm actually so happy about that. I don't want to ever, I don't want to think about American elections for 4 years. So what is going on with Assad? Is he dead? Is Assad dead?
Well, supposedly he's in Moscow, and
okay. He's not dead. Somebody was saying he was dead.
Yeah, according to the latest news, he wants to open up an eye clinic because he's an eye doctor, actually, right, by training. And he actually was an eye doctor in London, right, before he became the leader of Syria.
Well, the only reason he became leader of Syria is because his brother died, right?
Exactly, right. Yeah, but now he just, I mean, that's what I read online. Lots of people posted this. That he wants to open up an eye clinic in Russia, basically, right, in Moscow. So, I mean, that's where he is now. And so, I don't know. Well, that's what they're saying. The Russian government officially made official statement. They granted asylum to Assad for humanitarian reasons. So yeah, he's probably in Moscow. I'm sure they're going to show some footage soon of him walking around there with Putin or whatever, I suppose. What I just real quick, what I found really surprising about the whole Assad thing is how quick he was toppled, right? Because I read that his army, like the Syrian army, had like 300,000 soldiers, and the rebels had like 15,000. So the question is, like, why were the rebels so successful in defeating the Syrian army and basically ousting
Or
Assad?
like, why now, right? Why now? Because they've been trying forever, right? Yeah. So good question. Why now?
Well, I don't know. The question is, I think Assad generally wasn't very popular with his own people, right? And because what happened was the Syrian army basically just gave up. They just let the rebels march through the country on the way to Damascus. And I suppose a lot of the Syrian army sided with the rebels, even, right? I guess for Islamist reasons as well, because Assad was a Ba'athist, so basically a socialist, like Saddam was the same ideology, right? So it was Ba'athism, and Syria was basically the last Ba'athist state. So now Ba'athism as an ideology is finished. Completely.
Baathism, right? Ba'ath, B-A-A-T-A.
Right.
Yeah, and Baathism is kind of, if I understand correctly, kind of like a pan-Arabism, like
exactly. Well, it's pan-Arab nationalism. It's like secular pan-Arab nationalism with socialist streaks, basically.
Oh, right. So it's like non-religious pan-Arab nationalism. Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's why a lot of people are saying it. A lot of people think Assad was actually quite good, because you have a lot of like religious minorities in Syria, like Christians. They have a very large Christian community in Syria, and because the government was officially secular, they were protected and had equal rights. But now if you have the Islamists in power, well, I don't think they're going to have equal rights, and they're probably going to be harassed, if not worse. I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying. Even though the new leader said he won't do it, of course, he will treat all minorities with respect, etc. But we don't know if he's going to do it or not. So so basically, a lot of like people on the right, like Keith Woods, for example, he's pretty popular on X. He was a big fan of Assad. It's quite sad that Assad is not in power anymore. I guess it's because of Christianity, because Assad was considered the protector of the Christian Arabs, basically, and that protection is now gone with Assad ousted.
Yeah. Okay. So, is there any potential of either the EU or the United States being now once again filled or flooded with Syrian refugees, which is, I think, what happened in 2014 or something?
But now they're saying the opposite. Oh my God! So like you have Olaf Scholz, like the chancellor, the German chancellor. He's happy that Assad is ousted because according to him he was a brutal dictator that gassed his own people and all that stuff. We don't even know if that's true, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, so now they're saying, because now you have this phenomenon. I mean, right now at the moment you have this phenomenon, not just in Germany but in several European countries, of Syrian refugees that have been living in Germany for up to 10 years, almost 10 years, ever since 2015, like not demonstrating, but I don't know, marching through the streets with Islamist flags and celebrating the fact that Assad is not in power anymore, and finally Syria is free, blah blah blah. So now a lot of politicians in Germany are saying that, well, if Assad is not in power anymore and Syria is free, maybe these people should all go home, right? Because the reason why they're in Germany in the first place is because they claim they were persecuted by Assad, right? But now Assad,
they're asylum seekers, yeah.
Right. So, and just today, very funny. So now I guess now the globalists don't know what to do, because now the argument is gone for the Syrians to stay here by the millions. So now they're using all kinds of propaganda tricks. Just today I read an article in the German news that German doctors issue warnings: don't send Syrian refugees home because so many of them are doctors in German hospitals, and there will be a high price to pay if they go back to Syria. It's like, it's just so it's grotesque, really. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the Green Party people and the Socialist Party people in the German government are already saying, no, we shouldn't react too hastily, and the situation in Syria is still unstable. They should still be allowed to stay. We need to see how it will all play out. So I don't know. My personal opinion is that some of them will probably go back to Syria because they have property, like houses and other stuff. But it's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. It's my opinion is that the majority of them will not go home. I think the majority of them will stay. And
of course they're not going. Give me a break. I mean, they're not actual. I mean, I guess these ones are more refugee-ish than any of the other ones, right? I mean, they're probably the most reliably actually refugees, sort of, right?
Well, yeah. Well, the German government is certainly not going to make them go home, because they don't make anybody go home, really. I mean,
right.
Sometimes they pretend that they do. Usually 2 weeks before an election, they put some Afghans on a plane, and then like 20 of them, while like 300 of them come in every day, and then put it in every newspaper. And look, we're doing something. We're deporting people. It's like you have like millions of them in Germany, and then a week before the election, they put 20 or 30 of them on a plane and send them to Afghanistan. I mean, it's just so totally ridiculous. How can anybody take it seriously? I have no idea.
Wow. So huge things happening everywhere. We really, it's clear we've reached a cultural tipping point in many ways. So let's move on to the Daniel Penny conversation. And Dudley, I'll field this one to you. I think you posted something about this. Culturally, it feels like the time of the blue hairs has come to a close. Although what we're seeing internationally is actually kind of like Turbo America getting it's angry, so it's fucking up Europe. But here in America, we got Penny, we got CEOs getting killed, everything's happening in New York. So has a change happened? Is there a vibe shift? Where are you seeing things going?
Um, well, for one thing, we haven't seen any street violence post Penny's acquittal, correct? There's nothing today that I saw. So that probably means that it's not going to happen, which it absolutely would have a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's certainly a vibe shift. I think the steam is, the street protest train has run out of steam, and I think that maybe it was you who put that at the feet of the October 7th protest movement, the campus protesters, which split the left in half and made it a lot more difficult for the left to mobilize street protest for any cause.
Yeah.
And but I think it's also, it's just overall fatigue. This particular situation, I think, was even less egregious than the George Floyd situation. But and by that I mean that it was harder for them to make a case that this was somehow like hatred of Black people that resulted in this death. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a turning point. I think the fact that we have this like symbol now of bravery, and I think people are less afraid than ever to call that what it is, which is bravery. I don't know. I don't feel like there's when George Floyd died, you wouldn't have ever been able to get away with saying that you thought maybe there was more to the story than what met the eye. Whereas with this one, I just don't think that people cared enough to, try to get you fired over it or jump down your throat at a party or anything. It's just, it wasn't on their radar in the same way.
There was some protests outside the courtroom, though, right?
Was there? Are you talking about like before the acquittal?
Yeah, I think before the acquittal, it felt like it was the first time that there was like the lefties had gotten it together to show up at the protest for the first time in a while. But
did you happen to see footage? Because I'd be curious, is that like, white Antifa kids, or is that like Black, locals who were just kind of rabble rousing?
Yeah, I don't know.
But there was some footage I saw on X like today of like these white Antifa kids walking down the streets with banners screaming about racism, etc.
Yeah. It's funny because also people aren't enough talking about the last subway vigilante, who was the Jewish guy who killed or shot. I mean, I think actually maybe didn't kill any of them, but he shot like 6 Black dudes who tried to rob him.
Bernie Getz?
Yeah, Bernie Getz. Good old Bernie Getz. Do you know this story, Constantine, about Bernie Getz? You've heard this.
Yeah, I've heard it, yeah.
Yeah. So Bernie Getz, this already happened. This is take 2. This is the sequel. Daniel Penny is the sequel to Bernie Getz. It's the exact same scenario, basically. And he also got acquitted after the activist DA's office at the time, run by Robert Morgenthau, tried to throw the book at Getz. He also got acquitted by a jury of his peers who were like, fuck that. Yeah, I need to ride the subway. I don't like being attacked on the subway. So he's not wrong. So the same thing happened twice again. But it does feel like somewhere along the way, there was this vibe shift where it was like, oh shit, everybody's saying Daniel Penny's doomed. And then somewhere along the way, it was like, no, maybe he's not going to be doomed. Like maybe the people woke up in a certain way, right? And yeah, and the commies just weren't able to activate their people yet again. They haven't been able to get the spark going.
Yeah, I think this is all part of the paradigm shift that I've been talking about for the last several months, because I mean, I can feel a paradigm shift that people in general are changing. The consciousness of people is changing all across the West. I've been to the US several times this year, and I feel the same vibe there that I do here in Europe, because I think people in general are moving further right. I think the Overton window is shifting to the right in our favor. I think it's a general trend that you can observe everywhere in the West. I mean, obviously with the victory of Trump, which for me was totally unexpected. I mean, such a massive landslide. It's just amazing, really. You have the same in Germany with the AfD, with the victories getting stronger and stronger. Romania, of course, France, like Marine Le Pen is the most popular candidate at the moment. I mean, if they had presidential elections today, she would become president, basically, right? So you have it everywhere, well, except in England, but England is lost, in my opinion. It's not even part of the West anymore. So, yeah, the West is undergoing a paradigm shift, and the Daniel Penny narrative fits right into it because, as you were saying, people are like, yeah, I have to ride the subway. I don't want this crap anymore. I think a lot of people voted for Trump for economic reasons, but a lot of people also voted for Trump because they don't want that woke crap anymore. They just can't take it. It's just too ridiculous. It's just destroying everything that is normal in this country. Well, just Trump today tweeted that he wants to build monuments again to create American heroes. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that people want to hear. They want to go back to the roots, you know. They want to have a proper statue, I don't know, of Columbus or I don't know, Andrew Jackson, or new heroes, but in a realistic style and not some cubes or something. You know what I mean? Anyway, so that's my take on it.
What Isaac?
What'd you say? You just
I said he was talking about how building statues of old heroes and new, and I said Daniel Penny.
Yeah. Are we going to get a Penny statue? So like, what do you think, Dudley, is going to be the upshot of this? I mean, are we going to actually are the streets of New York City going to get cleaner? Are we going to be able to go to downtown LA and there'll be vigilantes beating up the homeless and flame throwing them, which is what I've been hoping for a long time. So yeah, like, I mean, you know, is there going to actually be any change now that the sort of symbolic protector of the people has been freed? One thing that was a little bit weird about the trial is that the jury got hung up on one charge, which was the most severe charge, which was manslaughter. There was another charge that was criminally negligent homicide, but the jury couldn't decide on that. And in today's world, it used to be, you know, we have these ideas of hung juries that go on for months. Now they'll do a mistrial. It's not a mistrial. Maybe it is a mistrial. When the jury can't decide, they'll call it really quick. They give them like a week, and they're like, all right, you're done. I actually used to work at the DA's office that this case was tried in. And it used to be a very conservative-leaning place. It really was not woke at all. But I'm sure that's changed in recent years. But anyway, so the judge dismissed the most severe cause, which was manslaughter, and he kept the criminally negligent homicide, which is maximum 4 years in jail. It's not really as bad. But I thought that the judge did that in order to make it so that he's just like, all right, forget about manslaughter. Just pick the criminally negligent homicide. Just do that. Get him in jail. At least he's got a charge. But then the jury came back and didn't do that one either, right? So it was interesting that it seemed like they were actually more inclined to do manslaughter. Because there must be some weird jury instruction in there that's like, for some reason, didn't make sense with the criminally negligent thing. So actually, you know, for all we know, it could have gone totally the other way. But yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, are people really going to be fed up enough that there's going to really be like a change now?
I guess I feel like this stuff doesn't happen overnight, right? Like, people talk a lot about the Soros-funded DAs, and it makes you sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's real. And I think it was Chris Rufo recently posted basically like a step-by-step plan to get rid of these Soros-funded DAs, district attorneys. And, you know, it's the same thing with judges. Like, I don't know what the solution is to the fact that we've got people in power across the judicial system that basically are there until they croak. But but I mean, as far as like at the ground level with public sentiment, I think we're there. The ball is in motion, and the momentum is building. People are sick of this. I think even some people on the left are maybe not the left, but liberals are getting sick of it too. It's just cities have, particularly New York, is, and I lived in New York for a time. I know people who live there, and people that are not conservatives are telling me, yeah, it's gotten bad. It's gotten worse.
Really?
I hate to admit it because it means that I'm saying the conservatives were right, but it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the last time I was in New York, I was on the subway, and those Showtime dancers that do that
No.
little like flipping around routine, or they do like a little, like they put a boombox on and then they all say Showtime. There's like 6 black teenagers, and they start flipping around on the bars. You can look this up on YouTube. But if like every New Yorker knows what I'm talking about, because this has been they've been a fixture on New York City subways for at least 15 years now.
I lived in New York City for 2 years. I never one time heard anybody say "shit time." Can you say that again? By the way, can you say that?
Showtime is how they
Oh,
say it.
I gotta
And then they bring like the
soundbite that and
shittiest
put that.
imaginable like Radio Shack CD player boombox, and with some music on it, and they blast it, and it'll be like your morning commute. You're just trying to stay sane before your work day, and then they come inches, but between your face and their shoe.
Right.
And anyway, the last time these kids, and then they pass a hat around for donations. And if they usually mostly stick to like the Times Square area. So if you're riding like the train through there, you'll see these guys. And then they pass the hat around, and they get a little bit belligerent if you don't donate, or if if they catch a whiff that you're like pissed off in any way.
Okay.
And the last time I was there, this old Jewish guy, elderly Jewish man, refused to get out of the way of their routine. And
Oh.
one of the Showtime kids like flipped out and was literally frothing at the mouth, like clawing at this guy. And then
Wait,
they
you
all just
saw
started
this?
like it
You
was
saw
total
this?
chaos. They were wailing on passengers, and finally this huge black guy, just bystander, gets up and grabs the feral Showtime kid and drags him and pushes him out of the train at the next stop.
Whoa.
And that was, and I basically like left at that point, so I don't know how things turned out, but basically it was a sign to me that just it's you take your life into your hands when you ride public transportation, which is such a shame, because when I was there, it was kind of in the height of post Giuliani safety, and it was a beautiful place to live because the New York subway runs all night long, and when you're young and single and in New York City, it's really a blast to be able to enjoy public space when it's when you don't have to worry about what violent threats are lurking around the corner.
I loved
So,
it, man.
yeah.
Some of the happiest moments of my life were on the New York City subway. I like was like built to ride that fucking subway. Like it's amazing that LA is the place I've like settled, because I hate driving, and I love driving that subway, man. Nothing made me happier than getting a coffee, getting on the subway, reading, listening to whatever. I just loved it. I don't know why. It's like I'm a communist at heart.
Yeah, well, I
And
think there's a right wing tendency to dismiss the importance of the built environment.
it's also just walking. It's nice to walk.
Yeah.
I don't like driving.
Well, there's a lot of conservatives that sneer at walkability. They think that's like a left coded thing to care about. But I'm totally the opposite. I'm one of these, walkability freaks that wants to have safe public spaces, and to be able to take my family to a dense, cafe lined street somewhere and spend a nice Sunday afternoon, people watching. I don't want to live with an F-150 out in the middle of nowhere and have to drive an hour to get to the hospital. I appreciate cities, and I think that now's the time for us to try to reclaim ownership of them.
Well, and that's happening, right? It's happening because cities really are becoming in the longer term, they're actually becoming more like whiter and richer.
Are they?
Yeah, I'm not going to do a good job articulating this, but you feel in LA, Northeast LA is like whiteifying in this like crazy way. And also I think parts of Manhattan feel like that and parts of Brooklyn feel like that because people are coalescing in these like zones that are like there's a right-wing edge in LA now. There's a right-wing edge here. There's a right-wing edge in New York City now. Where there's no right-wing edge in, if anything, the rural areas is going the other way. The rural areas are having the Hicklib problem. So it's like, actually, I do think we're going to see this like whiteifying of certain parts of the big cities. Not, some places will still be completely destroyed and et cetera. But I actually think that there's this consciousness now growing of the kind of need. You see more and more people homeschooling, more and more people kind of like getting together, doing religious stuff together. So, I mean, this is very much wishful thinking. I hope that this happens. But anyway. What about you, Constantine? What do you think? I know that you're in Europe, but you've been to America. What do you think? Vibe shift now that Daniel?
Yeah, totally. I mean, what you just said with the whiteifying, I completely agree. Well, I was in Nashville a couple of weeks ago, and there were a lot of new apartment buildings in downtown Nashville, and it was mostly like these white urban hipster types that hung around in the cafes in those neighborhoods. And I've seen the same in other cities in the United States. Like I saw it in Detroit when I was there, also like a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Also in downtown. I pretty much see it everywhere in the US, what you're describing, because you have this phenomenon of like this really sort of like, you can tell these apartment buildings are brand new. You have all these really trendy coffee shops, bike shops, etc. You have bike lanes and nice like beer gardens, etc. So I mean, all these downtown areas are becoming noticeably more beautiful. At least certain areas of them, from what I've noticed, right? And I think it's part of the phenomenon that you described. And so I completely agree. Right, that the cities are being retaken by the people who demand livability, basically, and walkability. By walkability, I mean that you should be able to get out of your house and walk to a restaurant, coffee shop, a supermarket, without the fear of being mugged or killed. Right,
Yeah.
just by walking a couple of blocks. And I'm a walking guy, as you know, right? Like I was in Los Angeles in March, and I didn't have a car when I was in LA, so I took the subway in LA, like everywhere. Yeah. And I thought it was quite nice, actually, like during the day. At night, it was a bit sketchy, so I didn't ride the subway at night. I took the Uber. But I walked, I think 24 or 25 miles in one day, right, through LA, like Koreatown, Hollywood, all these areas, like walked up, down hills, etc. Walked up to the observatory, walked down the observatory. So and I found it pretty walkable, to be honest, because a lot of people told me, it's not a walkable city, you need a car. But I completely disagree. I found it quite pleasant, actually, as a matter of fact. And I didn't really feel threatened, to be honest.
Did you get meningitis though after this?
I didn't. Right. Right. I didn't.
Right. I mean, that's the worst part in LA when you walk past. It's like you're like fuck, and you have to walk past one of the encampments, and it has that fucking.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Those were like in like downtown and Hollywood, right? Like those tents and the feces and the urine and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was quite shocking. Because I'd never seen anything like this before I came, like this year in March. I mean, I've seen videos of it, but then I saw it live and I was like, wow, it's like post-apocalyptic almost, like something from a Mad Max movie. Quite shocking, to be honest. But like in Nashville, it was completely absent. There was none of this whatsoever. It's like super clean. I guess it's because it's not a Democrat run state, Tennessee. Maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
It's very
Nashville's
clean.
great. I really like Nashville. Nashville is very impressive. I'm a big fan. Okay, let's move on to our last topic here, which is what we all want to talk about: the disappearance of literary men, which is us three. We're being disappeared from the literary sphere. What I first want to ask about, so this was a New York Times article that kind of hit, again, everything's like hitting at the same time, right? Like the mainstream media, which is great. It's very nice to watch, but like the mainstream media is publishing articles like this. We had the guy Dean Kissick publish in Harper's this article about the death of the woke killing the art world. This is also some woke person like admitting that there's no men in literature anymore. There was a guy who came out against like female cinematographers. All this shit's hitting at the same time. Like everything is just changing at the exact same time. It's very fun to watch. But nowhere is the backlash against woke more overdue and less possible, more impossible than in the literary sphere. So this seems to be the first skirmish. The first, what's the first, the word for the first thing in a war? The first
blood.
First something.
First strike? I don't know.
First, there's like the first blank. This is the failure of the literary men. Is this article in the New York Times? My first question, what the hell is this artwork? What are we looking at here? Is this a dinosaur? Why does it have these shoes on?
It's a writer.
What does this mean?
I wondered if that was F. Scott
Well,
Fitzgerald
it's
hair. You think that's supposed to be F. Scott Fitzgerald hair?
I don't know what the hell that's supposed to be.
Well, it's the white male writer goes the way of the dinosaurs, basically.
Right, but he's also wearing, for some reason, these shoes. Clearly, yeah, I don't know what is happening here in any way. But why is he writing on random paper? There's this woman staring at him. Like, it's the strangest cartoon I've ever seen. But okay, so did you read this, Dudley?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't just read it. I lived it, Isaac. I'll tell an anecdotal story, which is that I know a lot of people in the publishing industry. And more than 10 years ago now, I was at some cool literary party in New York. And I had brought a friend of mine who was basically white trash from my hometown. And he actually grew up in the poorest county and the poorest state in the country. He wasn't from my hometown, but I knew him from previously. Anyway, this, kind of bourgeois woman who worked in publishing asked this friend of mine what his favorite books are and kind of put him on the spot to try to seem cool in front of all these literary types. And he just sort of started rattling off a few of his favorite authors. And I think he got to like 3 or 4 and none of them were women. And she just immediately lasered in on that. And I was like, oh, no women, huh? And it was like, just made my friend feel like a total, shit. And in front of all these people he was trying to impress. And it was like just one of those moments in life where you realize like, oh, this is how it's going to be now. Like we have to pretend to be embarrassed to enjoy male authors. And we have to make sure that
what year was this?
This would have been like 2011 or 12.
Okay. So you're talking about, you were really telegraphing the next decade. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so the other anecdote is that, do you remember the guy in your MFA Twitter account?
No.
It was run by this woman who ended up getting a book deal to write a parody book called Guy in Your MFA. And it was this character she created about a clueless, guy who was always mansplaining to everyone about literature and but really, was a misogynist and pretended to be feminist. And, like he read David Foster Wallace, which became
Yes,
like
that became a thing.
a thing. Like if you're into David Foster
Yeah,
Wallace, you're a
you
lit
are
bro.
problematic. Yeah,
You're
you're
a
trying
lit
to
bro,
lure
and you
girls
need
back to
to.
your apartment and get them drunk and mansplain them and try and bang them.
Yeah, if you have Infinite Jest on your bookshelf, that means that you're one of these lit bros, and you're part of the problem. You need to educate yourself and do the work. And it reached a point where I think guys were just like, I don't want to work in this environment anymore. I'm not going to get promoted if I do well. I'm not going to, have the freedom to say what I think. And the publishing companies that I was familiar with were at least 80% staffed by women, and this was 15 years ago. And only there was like a guy who ran the thing, or two, and then the rest were women. And yeah, so I don't buy this like men don't read thing. I don't think women read either. The stats that they brought up in this article about women reading, I can't remember what the numbers are, but like most of that is just that porn stuff, that like fantasy Colleen Hoover stuff that's borderline erotica.
According to multiple reports, women readers now account for 80% of fiction sales.
Yeah, they're not reading War and Peace. They're reading like the cheapest sexiest stuff that they get on the airport newsstand. So I mean, I think the bigger problem is probably that just nobody's really reading real literature. But
well, it's also like chicken and the egg, right? It's like, okay, if you don't publish anything for guys or by guys, of course 80 women buy 80% of the books, because why would I go to bookstores all the time. I'm a guy who likes going to bookstores. I love going to bookstores. And you go in there, there's not a single new fiction book I would ever consider buying, because why would I want to get shrieked at? I don't give a shit about fat women, doing anything. And so what book would I buy? There is not one guy. Okay, sorry. We have Welbeck. We have Michel Welbeck, hailing from France, who's the single man on earth who is a mainstream writer that publishes books that any man I know would ever want to buy. It's like, you got to make the stuff we want to buy if we're going to buy it, right?
Yeah, and I'm a little bit less hostile to the current crop of literature. I read a lot, and I read a lot of contemporary fiction, and there's some good stuff out there. And
Well, like what? Tell us.
Dare I say it? There's some good stuff written by women too.
No, I believe it. But like what? Like what? Like what's good? You got to tell us.
I enjoyed that book, Fates and Furies, which was on the Obama book, like recommended book list when it came out.
Fates and Furies.
I didn't read it for that reason, but that's like kind of what it's most famous for. Let me think. I got to pull up my Goodreads profile. I do like Welbeck. I'm not knocking him at all. Let me hit you with a couple of these once I get my Goodreads set up. But
fire up that Goodreads, baby.
Are you on Goodreads, Isaac?
No, man.
Dude, you're more of a letterboxed guy?
Well, I don't do any of that stuff. What I will say is I'm about to republish this. I had the most embarrassing evening last night because I'm about to republish this story of me going on the train from LA to Chicago and meeting this guy who had just got out of federal prison that had the 14 words tattooed on him. And it's a pretty good story, but I wrote it as a like literary short story back in 2015. And I sent it to like the New Yorker. And I went back and I looked at me emailing this story to the New Yorker. And it is like the most embarrassing thing ever because it's so not good. And it's just like full of all this unnecessary sex. And like, I'm trying to like play this. I'm like trying to make it literary. So I make myself this like rich character. It's the cringiest thing in the history of mankind. So I certainly don't blame the literary world for not allowing me in anywhere near anything.
So
For a long
I
time.
enjoyed Steve in Florida by Gabe Habash. I enjoyed the. I've been reading a little bit of DeLillo lately, Don
Oh, okay.
DeLillo. I read the most
Libra. Are
recent.
you a Libra guy? Do you like?
I actually haven't read that one yet.
Yeah.
I read the most recent Cormac McCarthy before he died. I enjoyed that. I mean, I think what you're probably looking for is like younger writers, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I guess Cormac was really the last guy, but yeah, I don't know. So, what do you think the problem is? I don't know what it's like in Europe, but like, why do you think there's no young male? There's no more literary men around.
I think there are plenty of literary men around. They're just not being pushed by the establishment. And again, I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is ideology, because they have this like anti-racist, anti-sexist, uh, against male toxicity. That's the ideology the establishment is pushing all over. The Western establishment is pushing all over the world. Which brings me to Richard Spencer, by the way. Richard Spencer said in one of his podcasts several months ago, he said that liberalism is basically white supremacy, right? And I actually have to agree with this statement. Because it is mostly white people pushing this, right? I mean, if you go to India, if you go to China, if you go to any Asian country or even African country, you don't have this bizarre self-hating narrative, right? The glorification of weird delusions like transgender and other or sexual perversions, right? You just don't have it. It's a purely Western phenomenon, and in the West, it is mostly pushed by white people because I don't think the majority of blacks in the U.S. or Hispanics like subscribe to this. So I guess Richard Spencer was onto something. This whole phenomenon is not just relegated to literature; it's also in cinema, right? Because now you have like Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, for example, right? So you have this strange phenomenon where you have these huge corporations like Disney producing movies or TV shows that costs like hundreds of millions of dollars, but then people don't really want to watch them, right? Because they're full of this woke garbage that people just don't want to see because people are sick and tired of it. But they keep like churning them out. Why do they do this? They're not obviously not interested in making money, because if they were interested in making money, they wouldn't do it. So again, it's ideology trumps everything, which again, in my opinion, proves that these people are true believers. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense, because the last time you had some, say, quote unquote, like say pro-white or pro-Western mainstream movie series was probably The Lord of the Rings, the Peter Jackson version, right? Which was like openly like pro-West, pro-European, not diverse, no gay characters. None of this, right? It was purely based on, say, North European myth, and the actors reflected this. There was no diversity in the cast whatsoever. It was all white people, basically. The only dark people were the orcs, and they were fighting against them. And there was a massive success, because that's what people really want to see, right? So, I mean, well, like you just said, if the publishing industry would release more books like Cormac McCarthy or Michel Houellebecq, the French guy, people would buy it, right? Because people want it. People hunger for this, right? But it's not being produced in the right quantity anymore. I mean, once in a while you still get such novels or such movies, and they're usually massive successes and become cult classics for this reason, right? And I think because of the paradigm shift, you're going to see more and more of this. I mean, I just read an article a couple of weeks ago, Walmart getting rid of the gay propaganda stuff, basically, right? Because of the Trump re-election. I guess it's one of the consequences of it. But I guess because capitalism drives everything, right? But at the same time, right now you have liberal capitalism. You have capitalism controlled by these crazy liberals who believe in this insane ideology. But with Trump and various other populists possibly coming into power, and more and more people turning away from wokeism, I think the market will open up for male literature as well as male movies, pro-Western movies, movies like people really want to see. You know what I mean? And
Dudley,
which
what do you think? And then
are great.
I have my canned response to this, but Dudley, what do you think?
I agree that, I mean, he sort of pinpointed that the problem is the gatekeepers. And regardless of the economics of, current year male literature, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, since at least the 90s, I don't know, maybe even before then, the curve of sales on books is like at the top you have Jonathan Franzen, or no, let me take that back. At the absolute top you have Tom Clancy and James Patterson, your kind of airport bookshelf authors who are extremely successful. And then you have literary fiction authors, which are guys like Jonathan Franzen or Toni Morrison, people who aspire to higher artistic ideals, I guess. And then everything below that makes peanuts. And so it was never the case that there was a thriving ecosystem for literature, at least since, the advent of, I guess, like television. I think Delicious Tacos had something interesting to say about this recently, which is that like the future is just self-publishing and accepting that you're not going to be massively successful doing it, because the most successful among us are still, working writers, like we're working day jobs, I should say. And I think that maybe in 5 or 10 years, a guy of Delicious Tacos' stature within the counterculture will have enough heat behind him to actually make a dent in the mainstream and actually get picked up by a publisher. But I think our guys should probably not even bother.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't bother in some ways. I just wrote this piece about this exact thing, which is the death of editors. And I really do think that that's a big problem here. And I still think, even on our side, the guys haven't figured out how to get this editor relationship back in yet, which I think we need to do. That said, it's like, I don't know, it's like, I don't think that this direction we're heading in, look, the mainstream, if they're writing this article, right? If they've now have this wave post-Trump, and really because of October 7th, where they're like, okay, we're not doing the woke stuff anymore, right? What is the mainstream going to then do? So one example is, so my wife used to work at Hauser Wirth, right? This art gallery, famous international art gallery, one of the biggest in the world. And they had a controversy about 8 years ago that was, maybe less than 8 years ago, that was a Swiss artist doing like a pictorial examination of the wall, of the American wall, of the, the wall that Trump was supposedly building. This was while Trump was president. And it was like vivid pictures of the wall, along with his very objective, non-offensive commentary about like the meaning of its design, like what its design evoked, right? And it got like, the guy, it was like a huge controversy. Everybody was criticizing it. Oh, this is triggering the people on the staff, and so it was a big problem back then. Today, that same art would do great, right? Now they're going to slowly start creeping back into like, well, let's consider the flyover white man. What's his culture like? Let's explore. Let's make, and you see this already happening. Twisters, for example, it's like
No,
about America.
I just watched it on the airplane. It's a
Yeah,
complete masterpiece. I love it.
you love Twisters. So
Yeah.
this is what I'm worried about. And a lot of like people in our space love Twisters. But all we're going to get is this deracinated, ultra thin layer of Americana, not maybe not Americana, but like American white culture, rodeos, and kind of this like superficial Christianity. We're going to get this Midwestern, like, all the ads everybody's talking about is the sappy Volvo ad with the family, and they got the kids, and the kids are being, taken care of. And it's just like, we're going to get this hollowed right-wingism now in the mainstream culture. That's what I'm saying. We're entering slop world. We're going to enter like ultra slop land, where everything is going to be this kind of gross, shallow, vaguely right-coded version of everything. And probably the same thing is going to happen in literature, right? We're about to get like 50 hillbilly elegies now, because that's what they're going to be looking for. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but that's like how it's always been, because all that stuff is geared towards the mainstream, right? So you're going to have these shallow novels, you're going to have these shallow movies, but I think this is the way it's always been. But among these, you will have really profound works as well, but those will be, I don't know, few and far between, of course.
Few and far.
Right?
Right. Yeah. Dudley, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to think if there's that much, money sloshing around, that some of it might fall into the laps of, like a Sam Hyde or someone with subversive, intelligent ideas and who wants to make interesting art.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. I think there will be some people who get the benefit of that, and hopefully it'll be people like Tacos. Hopefully, really, the stars will rise. I think the issue, though, again, is that this system. It's not because I don't think the system is broken because of the topical failure. I don't think, I think everybody's really excited for everything to not be about wokeness anymore. But I just watched the football game yesterday. It was worse with the non-woke commercials. I miss the woke commercials because it was just like, now every commercial is the sappiest, blandest, lamest thing. It's like, at least before, you hate watched them, Whereas now everybody's so afraid that it's just like, and I think that's what's going to happen to the mainstream. And I don't think it's because, again, it was never because wokeness was the Borg. Wokeness is not the Borg. The Borg is total deracination. It's total deterritorialization. It's the turning of the human race into interchangeable cogs on a global scale with one single global power structure that controls everything. That's what really this next era is going to be about, fighting against that thing. Wokeness was just the paint they put on the system because it helped them in a lot of ways. Yeah. They're just going to learn to paint with a different color now, but it's still going to be the same Borg, right?
My fantasy is that something happens that's akin to like the grunge rush in the early 90s when Nirvana broke. The story here is that Nirvana sells millions and millions of copies of their debut album, and suddenly every weird, off-kilter, avant-garde rock outfit in the country is getting meetings with major labels because they want a piece of that action. They recognize that this is what the kids are into now. And I could see a world where, and this is partially the inspiration for my project, the New Right Post, which catalogs the most interesting voices in this burgeoning new right culture. I can see a world where that sort of happens and guys like Delicious Tacos, find themselves in positions where they're being offered a seat at the table for the first time ever, for purely exploitative, capitalist reasons. But that era resulted in a ton of really great music, regardless of how extractive those major labels were, and maybe they didn't have the same like DIY punk ethos that the indies did. But I love a lot of that music that came out of that. Those bands getting a ton of money for the first time and being able to explore the furthest reaches of their artistic impulses in very expensive studios with expensive gear. So yeah, I mean, let's look forward to that renaissance across not just writing, but all types of art.
I don't think it's going to happen in the way that we want it to, and I think that they're not able to do what you just said with Nirvana. They can't do that anymore. They're not able to identify new talent.
Well, it took them. I
they
mean,
can't do it.
the proto grunge stuff was happening since at least 1982 or 3 in Seattle. So that was 7 years of fermentation before
Yeah.
it got big enough.
Well, and
So,
we
I mean,
have the same, gangster rap. We have this punk. This same thing has happened so many times, but the academy, it gets stale and it gets destroyed, right? Because it gets destroyed by groups of people that it can't access for some reason, that are revealing something new that they don't really want revealed. And so that group, that outlaw group, comes up, and then the academy is ultimately forced to realize its mistake and go and do the new thing, right? That's the process. We've done this process a million times. Since Monet is the same story. The Renaissance is the same story. It's all the same thing. We've had the same process over and over. The difference now is that I don't think this regime can move. I don't think it can go. Twisters, no offense, I know you like Twisters. Twisters is not the same as the regime understanding over time grunge, right? That Twisters is the regime superficially changing the paint color. And I don't think the cultural regime can make that shift anymore. I don't think it can. I think because what defines women? Women cannot decide where to eat lunch, right? They have decision fatigue. You think they can decide who's a great writer? No, they can't decide. They can only decide who looks like already is a great writer.
But
right?
you're talking
They're
about
the ones
you're
making all
talking
the
about
decisions. It's just it's not going to be able to pivot.
Yeah, but it's not just women; it's the
No,
masses
you're
in
right. I know.
general.
I'm
Right.
trying to be
But the
funny.
masses
That
have
was a
all,
joke.
but the masses have always been indecisive. The masses must always be told what to do. Pretty much, that's how it is, right? And you can reprogram the masses within weeks or maybe months, right? All it takes is power, basically, right? You just need to take power. You need to have control of the media. You need to have control of political institutions, and you can easily institute a cultural shift, a massive one. Yeah. So I mean, Kramsky, the Italian communist, said it, right? It's all about meta politics. You have to basically march through the institutions and infiltrate the institutions, spreading your ideology and your thoughts, right? And it will seep into the mainstream, and they will adopt it as completely normal. I mean, that's how the left did it very successfully, and the right not so much, right? Not nearly as successful. So hopefully we will see a sort of paradigm shift where the right will adopt the same tactics without ceding too much ground or any ground at all.
Yeah, sorry. The thing about women is a joke. I'm not saying that women aren't ever capable of doing this thing. I just think that the demographic changes inside these systems, whether they're actual women or spiritual manager male women. It's. I just think. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that argument, Dudley?
I mean, you have that concept of like the tipping point at 50% when an organization is
Yeah.
more than half women.
Right.
It
It becomes
starts to,
unattractive to men to try to fight in it, because if you win in that system, you beat up a woman, and if you lose in that system, you got beat up by a woman, right? So that's what I'm getting at. I'm not saying that women are actually not able to do it.
I'm compelled by that argument. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the future looks just more like more successful DIY operations. Maybe it's our friends at Passage Press or something of that nature. I do think that culture vulture types are always looking for something that's a little bit ultra, and what our scene is too ultra for them to be able to comprehend, let alone appreciate. But over time, as the dime squares of the world continue to grow in popularity and expand their reach, I think there will be a market for some of this stuff, and I think people will want a piece of it. And I mean, the kind of like millennial female woke scold archetype that pops into my head when we have these conversations about publishing, because I literally knew people like this. Eventually they're going to age out, and there will be a newer, younger generation. And I tend to think that the woke phenomenon is largely millennial driven, and as millennials move up the ranks into positions of power, there will be fewer of them in the rank and file. And the rank and file is often what defines the actual behavior of these organizations more so than the leadership.
Yeah, right. It's the deep state of these systems. And the deep state is not going to be removed in the culture sphere. It's just not possible. They're not going to be removed. It's just they can't do it. And so my prediction is, once in a very, very rare while, the entire thing gets flipped over. The whole ox cart gets basically emptied out. And I think that that's what's going to happen. I think that we're going to get the parallel entities are going to simply completely overturn the traditional entities. And the traditional entities are just going to rot and die. But there will be good movies. Again, I mean, movies are at their end, but they're not just going to, it's a little too early for them to just be done. There's still going to be some good ones for a while. And I think books will be back. I think we're going to get all this stuff back. I think it's just, we're facing about a 20-year period in which people like us are going to have to destroy the old cultural regimes, and we're not going to have to destroy it by attacking it. We're going to have to destroy it by making better shit than it, and that's
you think we're halfway there, or you think we're just starting that 20-year period?
Just beginning. This is going to be 20 years. We're not going to really solve this for another 20 years, and at the end of that 20 years, all the cultural fixtures will basically be dead. And maybe they won't. Maybe they'll have evolved. They'll have taken a different form. But as you're saying, they're too sclerotic, and the deep state is too far in there, and you can't get them out. What are you going to do? Fire them all? It's impossible. Anyway, all right. Let's do. That's right.
Let's etch the words "more literary men" on 3 bullets and take a trip to New York City.
Okay, that's a joke.
Yep.
That's not. We're not doing that.
So this is satire. Satire alert. Satire alert.
Well, the great thing about being an artist is, really, we don't have to worry about doing any of this. We just have to make good shit, which is the right seems absolutely allergic to focusing on making work, because they're too busy writing about making work. They're too busy writing about why they're not getting paid to make work instead of making work. Okay, so Dudley, you got to go. Say your final statement here, please, and then Constantine, you can go, and we'll be done.
Gosh, how do we wrap up all 4 or 5 of those topics in one takeaway? But I guess it's that I feel good I'm feeling optimistic. I just don't feel the cloud that I felt from like 2013 to 2022 or 2023. It feels like it's broken. The sun is piercing through the clouds, and I feel like we all need to, if you don't feel that way already, make yourself feel that way, because it'll become this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to meme the world we want to see into reality.
I think the memeing is done. We now need to make the stuff. We need to make the things. The memeing has opened the door. Now we got to make the shit. All right.
Well
See you,
said.
Dudley. I know you got to bounce. Peace.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Final statement, Constantine.
Well, I have to agree with what Dudley said. So I feel exactly the same way. I'm very optimistic. So the blackpilling phase for me is over, especially with Trump's victory. So yeah, I really feel that things are slowly shifting in our favor. And well, I'm trying to participate in this cultural struggle and not just meme or, I don't know, retweet. So, I mean, I want to write more, create more, and educate people about certain important topics. So I wrote the book Esoteric Trumpism that we discussed in earlier podcasts.
Yeah.
I wrote a second book called Multipolarity ! Which is going to be published in January. So which goes into more detail about geopolitics and how it also affects certain cultural issues. There's a big chapter on the United States in the book, which also touches on some of the things that we have discussed. But overall, the tone is optimism, because I think that's what we need also, because as Dudley said, it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you constantly blackpill and say nothing's ever going to change, I mean, deep state's always going to be in charge. I mean, and then what's the point of it all, right? So, I mean, I think change is happening. It's slowly happening, but it is happening in increments. And we just have to speed things up by contributing to this change with our creative effort.
Totally. Well, we got to get these books. We got to get your books in more hands, which we'll do. So, thank you so much, Constantine. Appreciate you coming on. I'm going to end it.
Thank you.